This is the Page Publishing Book Club. Yes, it is. I love this. I'm your host, Alice Stockton Rossini, with my engineer who makes all sound possible. How you doing, Rob? Rob's bopping over there on the other side of the glass. If you're listening here tonight, you want to know why? You're listening because you want to write a book and you can't get off the dime, as they say. You can't get things moving. You have writer's block. You have writer's cramp. You're stuck somehow. Well, you're not alone, because every single author you hear on this show every single week had to overcome something. So listen up. You might hear yourself. Our first author is a World War II vet, and his story about how black U.S. soldiers were treated during that time is truly unbelievable. And there's also a dramatic twist, but I'm going to let him take you down the road. His book is called White Man's Tears Conquer My Pains.
It's about my tour of duty in World War II, and this doctor happened to be a Southern doctor, and I happened to be in a white hospital in the Philippine Islands, and they're not supposed to serve us blacks in a white hospital, but we're supposed to be over there fighting together, but we don't sleep together, and we don't get well together. I was able to handle it because I understood it in my own way. I understood that every time someone said something negative to you, that you couldn't just get angry. You had to learn how to smile and say, oh, well, what the hell, I didn't even hear that, you know.
You say white man's tears. Ultimately,
you want to know what that meant, huh?
Yeah.
They did not know that I was black when I got to the hospital. This is something I will never know. When I got to the hospital, I've been on an assignment, and it was 14 of us, and I was the only one that survived. And the last thing I remember was a Japanese laying on my body that was shot just as he got ready to hit me again with a bolo knife. A bolo knife is a knife that they use to cut little trees, like a tree is 2 inches in diameter. That bolo knife cuts it so you can make a trail in the jungle. And I was hit in the head, and then I was cut on my right hand. He went to hit me again, and like you would do automatically, protect your head, I raised my hand up, and he cut my hand with his bolo knife. And then he went to strike me again, and one of the fellows that was in my group shot him with an automatic machine gun, and he fell over my body. And I was bleeding so until the Japanese thought I was dead, and I'm sure I was out. But the only thing that I can remember is they had to pull their men off of my body when they was retreating or something, because somewhere the Filipinos or the Americans came in and took over this place that we had discovered, and this is what they wanted of us. They expected us to die.
And so they brought you into the hospital, and they didn't realize you were a black man.
They brought me in the hospital, but the fella in the next bed is the one that let me know how I got there, because I didn't really know. I just knew that I was all taped up and everything. And this fella, Southern doctor, his name was Lieutenant May, alcoholic. I could smell him almost a block away in that tent. And then he took care of me. He didn't know I could hear. He didn't know I could see. In fact, he knew I was black because the top of my head, they had left the top of my head, the bandage, open so they could clean the bandage, clean my head. Oh, God, he was a monster. And I fell in love with him.
You fell in love with him?
This man saved me and saved my life and saved other people around me. And the first thing he was doing after they found out that I was in there, what's this nigga doing in here? And And this doctor was always right there to say, he's a soldier just like you, and if you don't like it, get the hell out of this. And he was a surgeon. And he just protected me in every way. And when he cried, that built my heart up to a point where I didn't I swear, I never felt pain to a point where I said, give me some painkiller. Because his presence turned me on. I just said, well, God had put this angel down here and gave him enough alcohol or whatever I call it to keep me alive, and I don't have to worry about anything. I never thought I would die.
Now, this happened a long, long time ago, Henry. Why did you decide to write about this now?
Because I was talking with a kid sitting on a bar, a little white kid about 23 years old. It was less than a year ago. We were talking. He told me that he was going to, that he was in training for a job with the Denver Post. He looked at me and said, what happened to your hand? I never talked in 6 to 8 years. I never talked about service. Never to nobody, not even my wife. So I had to tell him the truth. Something just would not let me lie to him or cut him short because he's sitting here talking, giving me his life and everything, and he's really honest with me. And all of a sudden I found myself telling him about my war problems and my war things. And in about 15 to 20 minutes, here's an 86-year-old man crying. It just hit me pretty heavy.
That's what made you decide that you had to write this down.
Once I told him, it was like putting a pin into a balloon. I had to keep talking about it.
Well,
because all of a sudden it had struck my heart and it had to come out.
how are you? You're not doing book signings or anything, are you? How are people?
Yes.
You are?
Oh, yes. Oh, God. Since I had it's the same bar that I was telling you about.
Yeah.
It was kind of my neighborhood bar.
Right. You're doing book signings at your neighborhood bar.
I knew so many of the people at the bar. So when my book was finished, I took one of them down and let them see it, and the girls got together, and they said, we're going to have a book signing party for you. And the thing is that it's considered as a white club. I'm the only real black regular customer that's going there for 16 years. That's the way that bar is. But they had this party for me, and honey, it was so nice. They had a big cake, and I sold about 70 books. That was, to me, that's big time.
Oh,
when
Henry.
they stood in line and took pictures with me, and and my wife was there, and I had my family there that's here in Colorado, and friends that I hadn't seen in a long time, and I felt like a celebrity. They really changed my life. It's been a wonderful thing.
Henry, you are a celebrity. As far as I'm concerned, you're a celebrity. So there you go. There's so much more to this story. I mean, this guy took a knife to the head. He couldn't talk. He couldn't hear. And when his surgeon was done with him, it was a long time. But one day, Henry said, yes, sir. And tears actually streamed down this white surgeon's face. It is truly an amazing story of hope and survival. And thank you so much for sharing it right here on the Page Publishing Book Club. If there's one thing we all have in common, it's family issues. Am I right? You don't have any family issues right now. Rob has no family issues, and he has no problems with his wife either. Everything is perfect. Let's all go to Rob's house. No matter who you are, where you live, how much money you have, everybody's got something. So next up, a mother and son team of Tommy and Sharon Blood decided to write their issues in a book called Steel on Steel. So this was a joint venture. You did this book together.
Yes, ma'am. It's about aspects of families dealing with strife and the trials and tribulations that people go through in life. This book is like 4 stories that highlight
it's like dysfunctional secrets.
Just this massive work of abuse and just how people get through it and get to that next step.
Say it in 4 words. It'd be dysfunctional secrets, abuse, and bullying.
We have experience in dealing with this type of stuff, and I mean, in my opinion, if you have any views where you like to read about family strife, if you're searching for, am I the only one out here? Is there anybody else on the planet that feels the way I do at this moment? This is the type of book that'll maybe shine some light, bring some relevance to let people not feel they're so lonely, The other part is if you like baseball, if you like anything dealing with medical, the military, war, we touched a lot of topics with this. Plus, it was almost like a resume, what we're able to write.
The thing is, every family has strife and every family has trials and tribulations. Is there something unique that happened to your family?
Well, we kept a secret was kept for 52 years. I was married for 45 years. My ex-husband that was in the military. And at 52 years old, I had to tell him what had happened to me as a child. So, I mean, even my sons were shocked. They couldn't believe that I kept this secret for 52 years. And then it was really my mother that kept pushing me and
to keep the secret.
And I just couldn't take it anymore. I just snapped that day. And then when we were writing the book, my son came out with a story that I didn't know that happened to him. Thank God he wasn't molested, but he had a tragedy too.
And it was just the different ways that people deal with it. You know, Mom dealt with it in her way. I dealt with it in mine. And in the end, karma took over and took care of the whole situation. You live right, you do good, you be kind to people, you try to show them the right path, and, you know, you lead by example. And if you do that, you know, there's still a belief that things are going to work out, regardless of whether you believe in God, you believe in a gold statue, or a turtle. Who knows?
There's nothing I want to believe more than what goes around comes around. And if we could all really believe that and trust that good's going to come to those who do good and bad's going to come to those who do bad, you know, I think there'd be a much more peaceful world to live in. So you ended up writing like 2 huge books on this?
One book, and then we're writing volumes, because the book is a cross-cut novel. It cuts from one story to the next. It makes the reader think, keep up with it. It's not an Alfred Huxley Brave New World where it's sentence for sentence. We separated it through the chapter. But one chapter might lead into something totally new, and then, you know, 4 chapters later, you're back where you started. And it's a cross-cut. It's almost an adventure to read through because you're stuck in it. I've read back, you know, every review that I've had from people that have, you know, read it already. And, you know, once you pick it up, you can't put it down.
Steel on Steel. Why the title Steel on Steel?
Because steel can mean trial and tribulation, and redemption, resolution and redemption. Actually, that's their resolution and redemption. Steel on steel. They're like anagrams for, you know, it's like another meaning.
Okay. And the good news about this book is that everybody gets what's coming to them.
Yes. Oh, yes.
I love that.
Yeah. We're really good at killing off people, Alice.
Do you kill them off?
Oh, yeah. We're wiping characters out, and we got a lot more to offer with the expanded volume. That's where we're going with this, and just wanting to. I'm hoping to do at least 35 different volumes that expand this book out.
35 volumes?
Oh yeah, we're almost done with the 3rd in the review. They're all lined out. They all wrote themselves. We've changed some names in the variation, but if people that know us, when they read it, they know who we're talking about, and then people get to know the characters and see what happens.
Yeah.
But you know, it's about being able to record what happened in your whole life, you know, and to recall it. It's about being able to tell a story, and that's all it is. It's just our story.
Well, with 35 volumes in mind, this has got to be some story, and I can't wait to find out what that big secret is. Thanks, Tommy and Sharon. All right, we are going to take a quick break. When we come back, a guy who can thank the weather for getting him moving on a book. Stay with us.
Have you written a book and want to get it published? Then now's the time to call Page Publishing at 800-204-6099 and do it immediately. You see, they're looking for authors of all types of books. And unlike most publishers, Page Publishing will take the time to review most of the books submitted to them. And they'll even give you their feedback. And if they like what they read, Page Publishing will get your book into bookstores and for sale online at Amazon, the Apple iTunes Store, and other outlets. They'll handle everything: copyright protection, printing, cover art, publicity, and editing. So if you've written a novel, a children's book, a cookbook, inspirational work, a book of poetry, or biography, and want to get it published, then you need to call Page Publishing and do it immediately. Call 800-204-6099 now for your free author submission kit. Your road to fame and fortune could very well start with this simple phone call. For your free author submission kit, call Page Publishing at 800-204-6099.
Welcome back to the Page Publishing Book Club. I'm your host, Alice Stockton Rossini. Bad weather can lead to creativity. Yes, it's true. Paul Haskins is a prime example. Being forced indoors inspired him in a way he never thought possible. Dawn to Twilight is the name of his book. So, okay, tell me, what was the process here, Paul? The weather was bad, and then what?
So I walked in and I sit down at my laptop to stay out of it, and when I did, it seemed like just one closed memory file started jumping up after another. So I started typing, and from the time the little boy was born, and then I lost my father when I was little and had to go live with my aunt and uncle. And in as much as they had 5 children, we weren't necessarily a priority. But as I typed, I realized my father was still there with me. So as the sun starts going into the morning sky, I'm off to school. And then as I make it through school, it finally reaches high noon, and I realize my father's still there. So I keep on going. And then it get into my work world and some travel. And then it's time to, the sun gets into the afternoon. So I retire and continue in my travel. And then it just keeps going from there until I see the twilight is waiting its turn. But I decide I'll continue to travel and decide what dance I'm going to Friday or Saturday night until the twilight takes its turn.
So is this an autobiography of sorts?
In a sense it is, but there was an old story program on, it was called The Naked City, detective story in New York. And it always concludes every issue with, there's 8 million stories in the Naked City, and this is just one of them. And that's when I realized that between the dawn and the twilight, there are 8 million stories, and my book is just a few of them.
So you basically were doing this to keep yourself from going nuts when the weather got really bad last year.
Well, that's the way it started. In my little patio I built in the backyard, which is the cover of the book, okay, has the golden euonymuses in it, so that gave me the concept of, the dawn. And then in the evening, when I would see the shadows settling over it, that became the thoughts of the twilight. So my little story just became Dawn to Twilight, and that's the way I worked it out. But my book only took 2.5 months as I sit down and started typing.
So it just kind of came to you.
Right.
So what's unique about your story?
I guess the fact that as I went to school and I reached the fork of the road, it seems like my teachers was always there and touched me on the shoulder and said, Paul, try this, Paul, try that. And so I managed to take the fork of the road that led to a better life eventually, okay?
When it could have gone the other way.
Well, you're not going to believe this, but 3 or 4 months after I finished the book, as I was thinking about it, I realized just how many times that I could have taken the wrong path and life would have been totally different.
What did you end up doing?
I first got an associate arts degree in science from Chowan Junior College. I went on to North Carolina State and got a BS in mathematics. Then I was off to UNCG and got a BA in business, completed a couple courses in graduate work. But I had been a summer employee for AT&T on the missile sites. And when they sort of wrapped up, I then ended up my first year out teaching. And then AT&T looked me up and found me and said, you want to come back? The Safeguard Anti-Ballistic Missile System is coming in. So I don't know why I left teaching, but with year-round employment, benefits, and triple my pay, I thought I ought to do it. So I worked on the Safeguard and ballistic missile system in industrial engineering, and then the company transferred me to corporate headquarters in New Orleans. Did you ever see Green Acres on television?
I did, yes.
Well, where they would plug in the cords. Well, in long-range planning, my job was I did away with 1,500 of those cord boards, and one operator could handle the work of 5 on cord boards. So that's the way that went. And then if they didn't transfer me to investment cost, and I had to justify all those expenditures to the federal government on what they call freeway re-prescription. So I said, okay. But it was so lucrative, you know, we recovered those multi-million dollars in something like just 3 years.
Wow.
That's how lucrative it was. And then they came along and offered an early incentive retirement program, what they call VEER, Volunteer Enhanced Early Retirement. And it was just so lucrative that I couldn't afford not to take that either.
Sounds like you took all the right roads, Paul. You know what? He says life has been like a river on a sunny day, very smooth, and he just handles the undercurrents when they happen. It's just like me. That's what I do. No. I think when my life gets too smooth, I create currents. Anyway, we are going to switch gears completely now and enter the world of what would happen if, as in What I Did When the World Ended by Richard Craig. Richard, did your world end?
Well, no, actually it didn't. There was just kind of a little scenario that I've often run through in my mind. Being an old Marine, I stuck a Marine in it and played it out on the Gulf Coast, which is where I'm familiar with. Just basically what people would do and how they would band together and what would happen to them. And the fact that events like that, they don't change people. They bring out what was already there. The goods will go through and the bads will get worse, and there'll be conflicts and conflagrations and fiefdoms and kingdoms and everything else before it's over with.
Well, you know, your subtitle is The Adventures of Hasse Ostrowski. Is that your lead character?
Yes.
Is that your Marine?
That's my lead character. He's a retired Marine lieutenant colonel, typical old gruffy single retired officer, lives in, at the time when the event takes place, he's living in mountains of Colorado, building a shack into a house and keeping company with an old wolf that happened to wander in, and they tolerate each other. And he goes from there, and then naturally the next event takes place, and he is from originally the Gulf Coast, so that's where he needs to get. And it's about the people he meets on the way there and takes with him, and you know what happens.
Are any of these experiences based in in real life?
A couple of things are. I'm a Vietnam veteran, and I did a couple of things in Vietnam where I had to help some villagers get out of the way before they got put it nicely, exterminated. And we, not me all by myself, but myself and some other guys, moved a couple of villages before the VC could get there and take them out. It's kind of along that same line, and it's the fact that regardless, things come to the front, and I make a lot of references in there to he's tired. You know, he's not. I tried not to make it a teenage vampire book. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And we got enough of them right now. This guy's a little bit older, and he's seasoned, and he's been through it, and he's tired, and he's got to reach down and grab everything and bring it up one more time if he's going to get these people through all of this. And it's a varied group of folks. He's got circus performers, knife throwers, acrobats. He's got another group of old retired Marines that were on a tour. He's got Mexican farm hands. He's got people that he finds at an old folks home on the Gulf Coast that he builds into a refuge for everyone. And it just it's his story, and it's pretty much I hate to say it like this, but there's not a lot of shades of gray in the book. It's black and white. There's good and there's bad, and the good fight the bad, and in most cases overcome them. and they sometimes have to do things that are not what they wish to do, but what they have to do. And there are varied opinions. They pick up groups. They pick up a group of young surfers that was on the coast when this happened, and these guys, anytime they're attacked, they just want to wipe out everything. And Ostrowski tries to show a little mercy and a little leniency to the folks who come at them, hoping that maybe it'll spread and other things will happen which would make the world, in just his little corner of it, a better place, even after all the things that have happened. The main reason I wrote this was I have two hangovers from Vietnam. I have Agent Orange, which is eating my heart up, and I had post-traumatic stress syndrome. And this helped me through a time there when I was just learning all these things and what they were, and why I was thinking like I was. And it kind of picked me up, kept me something to do, kept me from sitting there and staring into the abyss.
And how are you getting your book out there? Are you doing book signings or anything like that?
I'm doing some book signings. I've done a couple of small independent stores. I'm trying to get, I have a lot of people who've read it, and a lot of people like it. I'm just trying to get them to get onto Amazon and give me some good reviews so I can get that portion of it pumped out. And donating $2 out of every book I sell to the Disabled American Veterans, which is where I am today. As a matter of fact, why you got me on the cell phone instead of my home phone. I'm a service officer with the Disabled American Veterans, where we volunteer at an office to help people to get benefits and find their way through the paperwork maze.
Love it, Richard. That's great. You know, when authors pour their heart and soul into a book and then share whatever amount of money they make with a group or cause they really care about, that's truly a great gift. Thanks a lot, Richard. All right, Mr. Clock says time to go. Thank you, Rob Barretts, the world's greatest engineer. World's greatest. He's here with me every Saturday at midnight, and thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight. We get lonely in here. Hope you've been inspired to write that book you've got inside of you. Come back next week for another edition of the Page Publishing Book Club right here on 710 WOR. I'm your host, Alice Stockton Rossini. Get out the computer and start writing.
Have you written a book and want to get it published? Then now's the time to call Page Publishing at 800-204-6099 and do it immediately. You see, they're looking for authors of all types of books. And unlike most publishers, Page Publishing will take the time to review most of the books submitted to them. And they'll even give you their feedback. And if they like what they read, Page Publishing will get your book into bookstores and for sale online at Amazon, the Apple iTunes Store, and other outlets. They'll handle everything. Copyright protection, printing, cover art, publicity, and editing. So if you've written a novel, a children's book, a cookbook, inspirational work, a book of poetry, or biography, and want to get it published, then you need to call Page Publishing and do it immediately. Call 800-204-6099 now for your free author submission kit. Your road to fame and fortune could very well start with this simple phone call for your free author submission kit. Call Page Publishing at 800-204-6099.